Hello everyone and welcome to Sinful Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope you're all staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all fighting that war against the Grey. So the other week I made a video going through the very basics of endless spells, how to use them, and what all the endless spells, the generic ones at least, do in Warhammer Age of Sigmar. Now, after I did that video, I got a lot of questions about, well, how do we start using them in-game some more, and so I thought I'd make one of our little countdown videos talking about some armies that make great use of endless spells. For me, endless spells are one of those really cool things in Warhammer Age of Sigmar that just make the game cool and fun and awesome to play. They are literally spells with actual models that you can see and physically see on the tabletop that move around, and they all look pretty darn cool as well. Bunch of armies get access to them, and there's even armies that get some endless prayers or evocations, whatever they're called. We're not going to look at evocations and endless prayers. They are not going to be included in this video. Instead, we're going to look solely at armies that make great use of endless spells. This is by no means a complete list of every army that can use endless spells in a good way, because we'd be here forever talking about all of them. However, what I've chosen is a few different sort of factions that do endless spells in different sort of ways and get them off in different sort of ways, so that we can all have a bit of a look and see how they work. And, well, you can sort of get an idea of where some might play into a way that you feel like you want to get into the game with. So, let's get cracking into the list though. This is 8 armies that make great use of endless spells. Number 1, and of course we're starting with Disciples of Tzeentch. The Chaos God of Magic makes fantastic use of endless spells in a variety of different ways. First of all, let's talk a little bit about Tzeentch and magic, and well, Tzeentch really, for the magic, puts out a lot of damage. It is a very mortal wound heavy magic sort of army that likes to put out a lot of its damage that the army does in general in the hero phase via wizards and magical ways. Now, what they can do with endless spells is they can begin to beef up this potential magical ability and even potentially get some extra cast on some of their wizards with things like the Chronomatic Cogs or the Balewind Vortex, potentially helping their wizards get even more casts onto the table. Of course, all these casts as well compound with the fact that you get summoning points, or rather fate points, for casting spells. So you're wanting to cast more and more spells, you're getting more summoning. This is all good for Disciples of Tzeentch. Adding to this though, you've actually got some really cool endless spells with a bunch of other sort of effects you can use to really help replenish your ranks with Tzeentch, like things like the Emerald Life Swarm is really good in a Tzeentch army, as those horrors keep regenerating and you bring them back with the Emerald Life Swarm. You've also got things that can give you rerolls to hit, which make your Zangor and Zangor Enlightened that a little bit better as well, with the Burning Head allowing reroll 1s to hit. And you've also got your own generic endless spells as well, which do a variety of different things. You've got one that gives reroll cast, one that's a mortal wound output machine, and one that just has a bunch of random effects it does. What's cool about Disciples of Tzeentch as well is you can actually bring in some of the Beasts of Chaos endless spells. If you choose to play the Phantasmagoria of Fate, you can bring in those because they can be cast by Beasts of Chaos wizards, which the Zangor Shaman is. Obviously, if you're playing Phantasmagoria of Fate, your stuff within that battalion becomes Tzeentch marked and then can take those endless spells as well. And Slaves to Darkness can bring in their own endless spells as well to the party by taking like a Chaos Sorcerer Lord. You've got a ton of options with magic and with endless spells with Disciples of Tzeentch. You really have just a massive pool, almost bigger than any other army in the game. Number 2, we have Gloomspite Gitz. Now, Gloomspite Gitz are a little bit different in that they don't have as many quality casters as, say, the Disciples of Tzeentch that we've previously mentioned. Rather, they have a bunch of cheap casters with some one-use abilities that make them better casters for at least a turn. You've got some decently powerful casters in Scragrot the Loon King, and even your Fungoid Cave Shamans and all those other wizards you've got access to can be pretty decent if all a bunch of random effects come into play at the one time, like the moon being above you, and a bunch of other things like command abilities and artifacts, etc., and even arcane terrain. But what Gloomspites have, though, is they've got some really decent endless spells of their own. For me, they're one of the armies that, whenever I'm running a list, I'm almost always, especially when running Grot Heavy, taking 3 endless spells in their list. Gloomspite put out a ton of negatives to hit, and you can really push this fact further when you start adding things in like the Geminids of Ulgish. The normal endless spells that belong to the Gloomspite Gitz are really good. Scrap Scattle's Arachna Cauldron, I hope I got that name correct, gives you access to a ton more spells for one of your wizards. The Malevolent Moon is fantastic in itself, and the Guttle Tide Spider thing, I've completely forgotten the name there. The Spider base is awesome as it can set up near any terrain piece and can be a mortal wound threat almost board wide. You've even got your own Mork's Mighty Mushroom, which can be quite random, but that's Gloomspite Gitz in a nutshell, but can do a ton of mortal wounds if you get it landing in the right spot. It's a cool little throw this mushroom bomb out in the middle of nowhere. You have, as mentioned, other endless spells that really do help. As previously mentioned, the Geminids of Ulgish are great, but you can also throw out some other of your cheaper endless spells as well to really start doing some mortal wound output damage and potentially affecting your opponent's abilities to move as well, which can hurt them playing against Gloomspite Gitz. So things like the Shards of Valagar or the Soul Snare Shackles, or even line of sight blocking stuff like the Prismatic Palisade or Suffocating Gravetide are all good shouts in a Gloomspite Gitz army. Next, we've got Cities of Sigmar. Now, in particular, we're going to talk about Hallowheart. Hallowheart is one of the many sub-factions Cities of Sigmar has access to, and it is the spell-casting specific sub-faction. What this does, straight away, just makes your army that much better at casting and enabling you to get endless spells off, is it makes all of your wizards dual casters. This means that all your single cast wizards that roughly are only 90 to 110 points in most cases get an extra spell, which means that can be used to throw out endless spells. You add into this as well, Cities of Sigmar in general, all the cities get empowered endless spells of the generic kind at all times. They've also got access to the Stormcast endless spells because they have Stormcast Eternal models to cast them with, and also you can potentially take the Sylvaneth ones if you're playing in a Living City army as well. But Hallowheart's what we're here to talk about, and the fact you can throw around empowered endless spells means things like Soulscream Bridge becomes that much more effective, able to help you redeploy 24-inch around the table, and also the Umbral Spell Portal as well becomes amazing, as when it's empowered in Cities of Sigmar, it has an unlimited range, meaning you can get those powerful spells that do tons of damage from your lore. In Hallowheart, the lore of Whitefire, you can get them where they need to be put. You can take things like the Lord Arcanum on Toralon as well to get a 2-caster in there to potentially get up a 3-cast wizard. And you've got other cool, powerful wizards as well that really make use of the command abilities to get all those bonuses to cast and won't die from them, like the Battle Mage and Griffin or Sorceress on Black Dragon, or even the Hurricanum or Luminarch with Battle Mages. Cities of Sigmar are a fantastic magic army, and they really make use of great endless spells. You can throw things in like an Emerald Lifeswarm behind some Phoenix Guard, regenerating those models your opponent really doesn't want to be getting back up because they're so hard to put down. This can make things like your Honored Retinue that much more survivable as well. Hallowheart in general is just fantastic for using endless spells. Cities of Sigmar really loves to use them, and you've got a really deep pool of ones that can really be useful to use for your army. Number 4, we have Skaven. Skaven are a fantastic army to make use of endless spells by the fact they've got a ton of cheap double casters within their army. The Grey Seer both on foot and on Screaming Bell, the Arch Warlock, Thanquol and Bonereaper himself are all amazing casters in their own right, and all the double casters for pretty cheap points costs, if Thanquol excluded, but he does get a ton of other benefits as well. You've also got the potential to have a bunch of cheaper casters as well, like Warlock Engineers as well, that you can just throw around casting spells for relatively cheap cost. Now, what makes Skaven great with endless spells is, once again, you've got a ton of bonuses you can compound to make your casters really good. And Skaven generally have a horde-sized army, so you're really wanting to potentially put some debuffs on your opponent, so things like the Geminids are really great as well, but even putting something like the Burning Head near your giant units of Clan Rats or Stormvermin, well, you don't care if you lose a couple because you've got that many rats on the table, really gives you that bit of an edge in combat with those reroll ones to hit. Skaven have some fantastic endless spells, and probably none more fantastic than the Warp Lightning Vortex, which you should check has been FAQ. It's no longer a 26-inch range, but it is a 13-inch range instead. However, when you combine that with all the abilities and the range of how you deploy, it's more like 20-ish range for the endless spell. That endless spell has won numerous people games. It is just utterly amazing in its own right, and definitely is rightly feared across the table. Yeah, other endless spells are pretty cool as well, with the Bell and the Rat Tide both doing good things for the army, but in general it's that Warp Lightning Vortex and things like Geminids of Ulgish that really hurt people when they play against Skaven. Number 5, and this is going to talk about number 6 pretty similarly after this. However, Nagash makes Legions of Nagash a fantastic army that likes to use endless spells, in particular one more than any. The Umbral spell portal allows Nagash to really reach out with that Hand of Dust spell and target your opponent if they don't carefully place their models. It puts the threat range up of that spell just massively and can really be a thorn in your opponent's side. You can put an Umbral spell portal on an objective, meaning your opponent can't go near it with big models, because otherwise Nagash could potentially just reach in and turn that little model to dust. But Legion Nagash also do make great use of other endless spells. Things like the Emerald Lifesworn can compound the fact they start bringing back models onto the tables. This can help you get more and more of them back on the table. But also, bravery debuff spells are great to use with Legion Nagash, as you don't suffer any of their negatives because you've got pretty high bravery yourself. All of this is compounded just by the fact that Nagash himself is an amazing caster, as well as Arkan the Black, who is like a little mini Nagash. Your basic wizards are pretty decent as well, with the Necromancer able to get a ton of pluses to cast, and Vampire Lord's pretty decent on their own right as well. And as mentioned, Nagash is going to be a big player in the reason why we're going to talk about number 6, and it's for very similar reasons. But number 6, we've got Ossiarch Bonereapers. As mentioned, you can use Umbral Spell Portal to get Nagash's Hand of Dust around the table where he needs to be, and both him and Arkan are decent casters. You've also got Vokmordian as well, who is like a little mini Nagash with his spell, which does a very similar thing to Hand of Dust. You can use this through Umbral Spell Portal as well. What Ossiarch Bonereapers do, however, that Legion Nagash don't, is they've got their own endless spells, and they are soul-linked. What soul-linked means is that you cannot, well, your opponent cannot move them around. Only the Ossiarch Bonereapers player gets to control these endless spells, and it really makes them useful. When you combine this by using endless spells that don't move and aren't predatory, like the Umbral Spell Portal, it really helps just push your army over that to that next sort of power level. A bunch of the Ossiarch Bonereapers endless spells are fantastic. They either do damage or do some really good buffs for your army, but in general, Ossiarch Bonereapers do make great use of endless spells, and it's for a lot of the reasons Legion Nagash do. It's just mainly the fact that Ossiarch Bonereapers also have their own endless spells that can't be touched by their opponent. Much like Tzeentch at the start of the video, where would we be without mentioning the premier magic army for Order, and that is the Lumineth Realm-Lords. Now, I think they do just edge that title of premier magic army, but that's mainly because everything in their army is mostly a wizard. Now, what makes them good with endless spells is, well, first of all, their endless spells that the Lumineth Realm-Lords get for themselves are all pretty decent. They've got some really good defensive ones, some offensive ones, and a great ton of just versatility with their own personal Lumineth Realm-Lords endless spells. But once again, you've got fantastic wizards, especially none other than Teclis himself, who can use the endless spells. Now, it is worth noting that Teclis can only cast one endless spell per turn like any other wizard. Even he's not that amazing. But you've got heaps of great casters in the army to make use of those endless spells. Now, Lumineth Realm-Lords are primarily -1 to hit if you're taking all the Venari units in Shining Company, so why not compound that with things like the Geminids of Orgish, or why not give yourself some buffs, because you can ignore the damage potential with different things for your armies by taking something like the Burning Head. Now, you've got other good things in Lumineth Realm-Lords as well. Umbral Spell Portal, once again, puts up the range of Teclis' generic spell where it can hit things almost board wide by using it. And also, you've got other great things you can do with endless spells by the fact your Venari units can actually cast them as well. This means you can have endless spells as a threat from a lot of places throughout the army. You can also start throwing up things like blocks and stuff to really help your troops hold the line, as the Lumineth Realm-Lords can be a bit light on troops, so things like Prismatic Palisades, Suffocating Gravetide, and even stuff like Ravnak's Gnashing Jaws and other large space endless spells can be really useful for blocking up space and helping you keep your battle lines intact. Lumineth Realm-Lords are just tons of fun to play with endless spells because they've got the casters that can get them out, and they've got ways to ignore the damage and fall back from potentially a lot of endless spells. So, let's talk about Seraphon. Number 8 on my list, Seraphon. Why are they a great endless spell army? Well, let's get talking about how they have their own host of generic endless spells that are changed slightly and now called bound variations. Now, they do not get bound variations of the endless spells from Forbidden Power, but only those that come from Malign Sorcery, including the Balewind Vortex. What bound endless spells are is they are endless spell variations that are generally that little bit better because your opponent can't touch them. Much like the soul-linked endless spells we previously talked about with Ossiarch Bonereapers, the Seraphon player is the only player that can use bound endless spells in between turns. What's better is Seraphon actually get access to a spell in their lore that allows them to bind other endless spells on the table, meaning you can take control of endless spells your opponent brings to the game and not allow them to actually use them. It can be amazingly powerful. Now, Seraphon also have access to a decent caster in the Slann and Lord Croak, and you've got great board-wide ability to get off the spells you need. Or even your little skink priests can get off some endless spells as they are relatively cheap and can be good little casters, even which your Slann can cast through as well, using their eyes to see the battlefield. But in general, you're going to be casting a lot of endless spells with your wizards during the games because, well, your opponent can't use them. This makes playing with things that otherwise would be dangerous to play with quite easy to use, and also allows you to play with things like the Emerald Life Swarm without hindrance from your opponent potentially stealing it off you. This means it opens up a wealth of different endless spells that now maybe are pretty good considering they can't actually hurt you. So things like the Purple Sun of Shaiish that could potentially be deadly to, say, your Saurus Cavalry or more monstrous units, now it's not an issue because it's never going to touch you, it's only going to hit your opponent's troops. This just makes Seraphon fantastic in the magic phase and in general using endless spells. Bound endless spells are a big reason why they're on this list. And well, lastly, before we finish up this video, I'm going to give an honourable mention in Kharadron Overlords. Yes, that's right, I'm giving an honourable mention to an army that doesn't actually have any wizards. Now, what Kharadron Overlords can do with endless spells, I think, is one of the coolest things in their entire army book. And I know some people hate this thing to no end. However, I think it's just utterly cool and just so thematic and awesome narratively to me that I love it. Maybe it shouldn't be particular endless spells allowed in it. Who knows, put a points cap on it or something to fix it maybe. But for me, Kharadron Overlords have this amazing artifact called Spell in a Bottle where they can literally pick any endless spell in the game and put it in a bottle and have their Aether Chemist throw it out during the game. For me, it's just awesome to see this happen. It just brings so much fun to the table. I love seeing people stuff different endless spells in the bottle, though Warp Lightning Vortex and other ones like that are generally people's go-to choices. I think there's tons of other play and a bunch of other options as well. For me, this is just a fun thing you can do with Kharadron Overlords and actually something really popular and good in competitive lists as well. But worth a mention, I think, at the end of the video. Well, thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Why not give it a like and subscribe to the channel? And also, drop a comment down below of your favourite endless spell and endless spell casting combo or combos of endless spells in the comments below, please. If you'd like to come chat more with me and other members of our little community that's growing fast, you can do so by following the link to our Discord server in the description of the video. And while you're on YouTube, go check out my featured channel section, which has a bunch of other fantastic Warhammer Age of Sigmar content creators putting out a bunch of things from battle reports, painting videos, tactical videos, and more besides. Lastly though, thank you to everyone who supports the channel via Patreon and YouTube members. Thank you to James, AJC, JC, Christian Weir, Philip Ward, Soren, Kenny Lowell, Outer and Shot First, Chaos Spawn, James Crowder, and Andrew Jarvis. Thank you all for supporting the channel, and if you'd like to help support the channel like these fine people do, you can do so by following the links down to either our Patreon or YouTube members in the description of the video. Thank you all for watching though, stay safe everyone, stay well, and most of all, keep fighting that war against the Grey. Ciao for now.